so much manipulation that goes on, in our lives that, I think we get hurt and I believe that Snowden and Assange are real assets to modern day society. Yet, if you were to have them walk down the street, either British intelligence, Australian intelligence, let's say, so they would kill them if they
They
saw them on the
would.
street. They would
Yeah.
kill them,
Yeah.
because they're a threat to. But what are they a threat to? The truth? Exposing the truth?
I think I would even say that, going back to what we were talking about before about the narrative, they're a threat to the narrative. If the powers that be, and by the way, I believe the powers that be are way. I don't focus on even the Trump level. I'm talking about the 0.001%, way up above that. That's what I personally believe.
Right, I agree with you.
Yeah. So the powers that be, the most important thing is that they keep the narrative going. So if we are in fear and we never look, we've already acknowledged, both of us, that there are real enemies of countries that are about freedom like ours. There are real enemies in the world. So we're not saying that doesn't exist, but I think where the narrative gets challenged is, what about the enemies within our borders? Within our, are they in Congress? Are they in the CIA? Do we have shadow governments? Do we have factions that do things like what happened to JFK? I'm not saying that's we don't know with JFK, we don't know with 9/11, but I think at least some of these conspiracy ideas are true, and if they are, then we've got people in power who are actually saying they are one thing, but are really not for the people at all, and maybe what you call, they're more like global elite. I don't use the term elite so much. I prefer the term the global elite, who have no affinity with any one nation. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I did a lot of research along that line, now people could say, Dwight, you're going to talk about a conspiracy now, but that's okay. I want people to think about what I'm about to say. Is that a lot, in my opinion, from what I've read and looked into, the elite that we talk about, we don't put necessarily names. I'm not going to say John Brown is a member of the elite,
Sure.
but this elite seems to go back to the beginning of time in history. That these, if they're powerful families or organizations, have interconnected and stayed below the surface, but they seem, James, to have always been in power at the top. They've never really gone away. And even though nations rise and fall, types of of economies come and go, they've always remained in power, always, and they've never gone away. And you can't get to them somehow.
We can't get to them because half the time we don't know who they are.
Exactly.
Like, here's a question I'd give you about U.S. politics. Presidents come and go, right? And they've all got their different backgrounds and interests, but they're only ever in power 4 to 8 years.
Exactly.
So do you really think, when you're really talking each of those 4 to 8 year blocks, you're probably talking, in my estimates, when everything's added up, quadrillions of dollars in income goes down? Do you really think they're going to let in somebody, or they're going to give? Sorry, I'll reword that. Do you really think they're going to let somebody in who's got so many ideas to restructure the whole system? And then, if you do believe that, then why? That would be the biggest business mistake in history. Do you know what I mean? Like, the U.S. now is essentially like Rome at the time of Christ. It's it's so dominant. And so, why? Do you really think these powers that be are just going to stand back and let someone? I just believe the president doesn't have anywhere near as much power as we think, and you see that quite a bit with the best UFO researchers have got into. They've actually, some of them have actually been called in by presidents. There was one, I believe it was Richard Dolan is his name. He's a former historian, American, and he got into the UFO field by mistake, and it just fascinated him. And he's one of the best researchers in that field. And he actually got called in by Obama, and as he's sitting there, he's going, "Why am I having to tell the president about what I know, shouldn't the president know? And another example is I believe it was the one before Reagan. Was it Jimmy Carter or Ford? I think it was. Who was it? I think it was Ford, wasn't it? Was the one just before Reagan?
Let's see. Now you got to make me think.
Okay, sorry.
We had Ford, Reagan. Yeah, Reagan came out. No, it
was Carter.
It was Reagan. Ford, Carter, Reagan.
Yeah, I believe it was Jimmy Carter. He'd actually said on the campaign trail that he'd either seen a UFO or he had an interest in that field and he wanted to know. And there's a strong rumor that when he was in office, someone came in from that sector of the military where they do whatever they're doing, whether it's anti-gravity technologies or whatever they do out there in Area 51, we don't know. But what they were saying, and it was several White House interns, employees that actually reported this, that they actually saw after the meeting, Jimmy Carter was just weeping. He was just seen crying with his head in his hands. And so what would make a man cry like that, like a baby, once he'd been told the secrets of the UFO field? Now, so that's two things to me. It says that we're dealing with a very vast conspiracy that maybe goes to, a matrix level or something like that, and that the average person couldn't conceive of it. And maybe there's even validity to the ideas that we're being protected, that some secrets are so advanced that we just couldn't handle it. That the average person, they want to go to their baseball each Saturday, they want to watch whatever's on TV, they don't want their reality screwed with too much. Do you know what I'm saying? So there is that, but it also says to me that presidents are not there are many classification levels above presidents, and they don't really know what. Some guy in power 4 to 8 years, they're not going to let him be in complete control in it. And I think once we get that, then we can start focusing on, well, who are the power players around this year after year, decade after decade? Is it people like, say, Henry Kissinger, people like that? Is it people much higher? Is it unknown elites around the world? We don't know.
Yeah, well, again, now you're touching on the shadow government. We had Eisenhower, that it was reported that he met with UFO people from other, I guess, planets, whatever. We had Reagan, who actually, I think, well, Tina is an expert. She's the producer of the show. She knows a lot about UFO field. Said he had his pilot chase down a UFO in his plane when he was the governor of California. You had Jimmy Carter. He saw a UFO. So,
okay.
But I think what happens is that, from what I've had and research I've done, they get elected, and then you're sort of taken in and to a meeting. I'm just going to say this. I'm just thinking this might be what happens, and you're told you're on a need-to-know basis only on a lot of these questions you have, and you're not allowed to know what you're asking me. And then they probably say, "Well, I'm a president." And they say you're a president because you were made the president, and your tenure can be a comfortable one, or it can be like Trump's going through right now, one that isn't comfortable. It depends upon how much you want to shake the system, but you're dealing with a system that's been around for a long time, and the people that you're talking to, these generals and even the people above them that tell them they've been around 35, 40 years, and you're a new kid on the block, and allow you to come in and disrupt this. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be allowed to do that. And a lot of people think that that's what happened to Kennedy. Is basically they had Kennedy assassinated because he was stepping into areas that the elite didn't want for him to interfere with. There's been a lot of investigation of the Kennedy assassination, but again, you find how does a guy shoot a gun like that gun with a couple of hits at that range in a matter of like a second or something like that? There's a lot of people that when you start tearing down these things, they say, well, that's impossible to do. There had to have been another shooter on a hill, or you get into all the people say, no, you're just a conspiracy nut. No, if you talk to physicists and people, they'll tell you it was impossible to do what some of these things are done. There had to have been somebody else involved. And it's like we've fallen down the rabbit hole. you know, is what we have. When you dig into it, like you've dug into it, and we don't have much time till we come to a break, we'll have to get into this in the next hour. Fascinating show so far.